Chapter 14. Loose Ends. The weather in Tylersville was unbearably cold when they resumed training in January. Had they all been in town together over break, there's a good chance they would have been able to practice, but with Liz away in Cambridge, their forced hiatus resulted in a series of expected setbacks, dangerously close to the mission date. It took until Wednesday to get fully into the swing of things again. However, by Friday, they completed the entire afternoon without injury. To everyone's frustration, most of all her own, Liz's skills at the other languages had regressed over Christmas and New Year's, which she vocally and repeatedly blamed on her lack of privacy with her family. But no one seemed to care. On the other hand, Kent had clearly practiced and was now showing up the rest with his conversational tests over dinner. They were scheduled to depart the following Friday. Just over 2 weeks to go before the mission, Johnny was half asleep on the couch facing the common room TV, his arm completely asleep under Emma's prone body, who herself was barely conscious beside him. She had counted this date as their 3-month anniversary, so the pair had spent all day together as usual, but added a dinner at the town's authentic Mexican restaurant for dinner to celebrate. Having apparently outdone himself at Christmas, Emma demanded Johnny not buy her anything for such an insignificant milestone as 3 months, but he still managed to sneak away and find a bundle of red roses at the local Albertsons. Emma was both touched and embarrassed when he revealed them, having not offered anything in return, but Johnny quoted her request of no presents word for word, and that seemed to pacify her. Now they were alone in the common room. It was a snowy Sunday evening, the sun disappearing early in the afternoon and their attention on football long since disappeared. The Broncos had been blown out by the Colts what must have been hours ago. The anxiety-inducing sound of the 60 minutes clock had given way to Madam's secretary. Johnny should have been fast asleep, readying himself for the full final week of training, and was almost tempted to transition them to his bedroom when a specific buzz vibrated his phone on the coffee table beside them. Normally it was silenced, save for a select few numbers which gave noise in case of emergencies. Emma, Jordan's mom, and one he was not yet used to. This one came from Shane. "My office in 30. Come alone." His arm jerked out from under Emma's head, grasping his phone to make sure he read it correctly. She shook mid-snore, jerking awake and blinking away her unawareness. "What?" she gasped. Johnny looked one more time at the message before putting his phone back on the table. "I gotta go," he stated urgently. The laziness fell from Emma's face. "What?" she repeated. "Why?" "It's Shane," he admitted. "It sounds urgent." Emma frowned. "On a Sunday night? What time is it anyway?" "Almost 9:30. Johnny glanced again. "He said to be there by 10. Emma's concern faded into a smug grin. "It doesn't take you that long to get to the embassy," she noted. Her freezing hands slipped themselves up his sleeves. "Stay here for 5 minutes. He allowed her only that. With everyone off in their respective rooms, he felt his inhibitions break and let her kiss him out in the open. He loved every second, but counted all the way to 300 and stopped exactly that many from when she had started. "You better say goodnight to me when you get back," she pouted, her chapped lip extended playfully as she crossed her arms like a child mid-tantrum. "When don't I? And tell Shane I don't appreciate him stealing you from me," she called. "Will do," he answered, halfway out the door. Down below, the streetlights illuminated the snow in a way that made the very ground glow. Wind ripped through the buttes, whistling the only noise for miles around. Everything else about the city was eerily silent. The sound of the monorail coming into the station snapped Johnny back to attention, but the lack of any other passenger kept alive the uncanniness. There was something odd about this meeting, he knew. Something Shane was not willing to share over the phone. He'd never been outright called to the embassy before. Not able to find something he might have done wrong to justify the summons, he stayed silent and unnerved as the carriage approached the embassy station. Johnny had only been to Shane's office once before. Located a floor below the Prime Minister's, it occupied roughly the same spot on the floor plan. Shane had the walls decorated with a number of pictures, the majority in his U.S. Army uniform, and the most prominent of which was his receiving the Medal of Honor from President Obama. Elsewhere, odd knickknacks stood naked or in cases on glass shelves attached to the side walls. 3 baseballs were signed by 3 separate Giants teams in the wake of their recent title run. Illuminated in a standing frame was a comic book titled The Amazing Spider-Man Meet Madam Web. He'd not been able to find a signature anywhere on the cover, so figured it must be a first edition of some sort. Led in through an empty lobby by an expectant security guard, Johnny found Shane's office the same way it had been before, save for 2 empty wine glasses and a bottle where his laptop once sat. Shane was leaned back casually in his chair, facing his photos and throwing a sponge ball attached to a bungee cord, which would fly a meter or 2 before shooting back to its source. Behind him, the curved wall of windows was covered by a series of heavy blackout curtains. He turned when the door opened. "Sir," Johnny nodded courteously. Shane pulled the band from his wrist and threw his toy on the ground beside him. "Have a seat, John," he said solemnly, turning his attention to the glasses. "Sir," he said again hesitantly. His heart began to race in anxious confusion. "Did I do something?" No, Shane said quickly. "Nothing wrong. Take a seat." His casual demeanor kept Johnny uneasy, but he did as he was told. Care for a drink? Johnny looked between the glasses and the bottle, then up at the Deputy Prime Minister. I'm 15, sir. I'm aware of that, Shane shrugged. But you're in a safe location with a supervising adult who's giving you permission if you so choose. Again, Johnny looked between the three. No, thank you, sir. Shane shrugged, as if to say, suit yourself. He poured himself a glass and put the other off to the side. I do have some news to share with you, he continued. Some people prefer the buzz to lessen the blow. Jordan's mom, Johnny thought immediately, but held his breath. There was something off about the way Shane was watching him, like he was testing Johnny's answers. He decided to play ball. 1 Peter 5:8, he breathed. Shane laughed out loud. I knew you went to church with Garen, he choked, but I didn't see that one coming. He smiled. Alert and sober-minded. That's a good one. He leaned back and peered up at the ceiling. All right, Ecclesiastes 9:7. Johnny paged through the verses in his head. Drink your wine with a joyful heart, he recited. That's very good, sir. Shane continued grinning. What do you have to say to that? I'd say I didn't know you were a churchman. Shane nodded. I think I've been too long away to consider myself one, he admitted. But the word is power for those who know how to use it. And poison to those who abuse it, Johnny rebuked. Romans 14 in its entirety. Shane's eyes flashed with realization, and Johnny knew he had caught him off guard. Very good, he concluded, finishing the last of his glass in another single sip. He folded his hands and leaned over the desk. How are you feeling about the mission? Johnny realized his anxiety was lessening. Good, sir, he said honestly. I think my Polish is as good as it'll ever be, and everyone else seems to be on pace to do the same by the time we go. And your role specifically? Shane added, stone-faced. Johnny shrugged. Fine, he admitted. It's just finding and deleting files. I've done it 100 times now. Shane nodded, leaning stiffly back in his chair. He looked at the door behind Johnny's head and swallowed loudly. Then he waited, as if waiting for Johnny to make a move. Sir? Shane eyed him cautiously, then leaned in again. This room is completely soundproof, he began. You could put a stethoscope to the outside wall and you'd hear nothing but muffling. The only way someone could hear what we're saying is if they secretly bugged the room or climbed through the air duct and were sitting behind the gate. He pointed to a cover on the wall, painted to match the rest of the room. Do you think we need to check it? Johnny's heart rate was coming back. No, sir. Good. Shane gave a slight smile. Then you understand the severity of what I'm about to share with you. Johnny swallowed himself, then nodded. Yes, sir. You cannot share this with anyone outside that door. Not your brother, not your girlfriend, not Clark Sander. Is that clear? Johnny could not find his voice to affirm. Shane leaned over the desk, unblinking. A buzz in Johnny's ears threatened to mask the following words. Your mission is going to fail. Johnny stared into Shane's dark, emotionless eyes, the sentence playing several times before its meaning stuck. What do you mean? I mean, he went on, it is specifically designed to fail, and I need you to let it happen. Johnny opened his mouth to speak, but again found his voice out of reach. The failed assassination attempt opened a serious can of worms that we were not expecting to reach. Your mission in Beijing needs to fail to clean up the loose ends we left out on the table. Johnny swallowed hard, a lump growing like a tumor in his throat. Shane went on. The reason I'm telling you specifically is because I believe you're the only one in your squad competent enough to correct the mission when it goes wrong. He paused, his face more stoic than Johnny had ever seen it. And I can't have you do that. A cold air dropped the temperature in the office. A million thoughts ran through Johnny's mind. He struggled to even find a place to start. He hesitated. Does Mr. Garen know about this? Shane laughed. Do you trust me, Johnny? He answered swiftly. Johnny breathed hard and shallow. Do you trust me? He repeated. Johnny found his voice. Of course, sir. Then I need you to trust that my loyalties lie with him, he commanded. This plan didn't originate with me, but if something were to happen, somehow your knowledge of the situation gets out, God forbid, this needs to be traceable to me, and only me. The whole point of all of this is to take the pressure off of Garen. Johnny breathed deeply. But Xander said... He stopped himself, his mind circling around the squad. Liz, you guys promised your family should be out of danger, and she will be, Shane argued. When I say this plan is specifically designed to fail, I mean it is meticulously planned. Any collateral damage is scheduled directly from this building, down to the second. I need you to do exactly what you've been instructed to do since day one, and not deviate it from it in any form. Johnny felt his face whiten. Don't be the hero this time, Shane added. He could feel pressure building in his ears. Part of him wanted to jump over the desk and slap the deputy in the face. The other part was trying to visualize all the ways things could go wrong. How is it going to fail? Shane smiled. I can't tell you that. Exactly what Johnny expected him to say. Just stick to the plan and don't get distracted when the moment comes, Shane instructed. Am I safe? He blurted out, not even meaning to say it. Is Emma? Shane held up a hand to calm him. Of course you are, he said. And I need you to trust me on that. Trust you on that? Johnny shouted. You're going to get one of us killed! Johnny, Shane raised. You're not in danger. Emma's not in danger. She'll be far away from any of the action, and you'll be completely fine so long as you stick to the plan. The plan? Johnny could feel his face reddening now, unfamiliar with losing his emotions like this. You want me to stick to the plan? Then why tell me at all? Shane took a deep breath, clearly trying to reduce the pace of the conversation. He held up a hand again for calm, and Johnny realized he had risen from his chair. Because I have a second task for you, Shane added plainly. The wind had been pulled out of Johnny like a vacuum. He was sweating now, terrifyingly eager to hear the deputy get to the point. Shane went on before he could argue. There exists a third plot in all of this, he said. One we have little to no control over. It's aware of your mission and intends to catch you off guard in the aftermath. Johnny stared across the desk, his eyes furrowed. A third plot? He questioned. Like, another branch? Not exactly, Shane answered, and Johnny could see his caution to share more than was necessary. You remember how I described you to the Canadian delegation when you were introduced back in October? Of course I remember, he wanted to hiss. An invaluable asset to the program, Johnny quoted, remembering their conversation at the foot of the school. That's an understatement, Shane argued. The potential you possess in a place like this, it's incomprehensible to people who can see beyond the surface. Johnny remembered what he had been told in the training center after Emma's breakdown. You think I have more effects hidden underneath my memory? Shane grinned. I don't just think it, he stated. I'm certain of it. He shifted his weight in his chair. The problem is that speculation is on file, and Chervinsky's government not only has access to that speculation, but has already sold information like it to anyone willing to buy it. Johnny thought of the files he was training to destroy. Project Noah, he voiced, isn't just an issue for the Chinese to find, Shane informed. Independent agencies are rediscovering what we're hiding. Can you imagine Al-Qaeda having access to someone who could crash the Eastern power grid by just thinking about it? Johnny had never met anyone with that capability, but similar theories were now playing out in his mind. Shane, he whispered, still trying to connect the dots. What does this have to do with me? One final time, Shane offered him a glass of wine, then turned more solemn than Johnny would have thought possible. Your identity has already been sold off, he hushed. There's an active bounty on your head, and we have considerable reason to trust that as soon as your mission in the embassy is over, whether you succeed or fail, one of these agencies is going to make a move to capture you. Johnny's body felt numb. Were he to try and stand, to run out of the room and dismiss what Shane had just said, he would have collapsed onto the floor. His ability to even take in breath was gone. He sat there motionless. Shane continued, his eyes showing the slightest spark of good news. Which is why, as soon as the mission fails, when you see things hit the fan, I need you to stay put. Fight if you need to fight, kill if you need to kill, but stay absolutely put until you get the go-ahead to leave the building. When the coast is clear, I'll be in your ear. No one else will be able to hear me, just you. I'll tell you a single word, at which point you need to get yourself out of the embassy and head out east on Embassy Row. Hidden between the Mongolian and Bulgarian embassies is the Embassy of Ireland, outside of which will be parked a silver Geely Jingwei with the license plate Delta Foxtrot 9, 73 Alpha. Go directly to the right rear door, get inside. They'll take you to safety as quickly as possible. Got it? Shane knew he had memorized the instructions with a single listen, but Johnny was still trying to process everything he'd been told, as far back as when he had first walked into the office. Shane stared at him decisively over the desktop, waiting for some sign of understanding. Johnny again struggled to find his voice. Can I... He coughed. Can I get some water? Shane's demeanor switched completely. He blinked away his calculating expression to one more compassionate. Yes, of course, he permitted, standing himself and grabbing a bottle from inside his hidden fridge. Johnny took 3 quick swigs, finally noticing his hands shaking. He closed his eyes and managed a full breath. Sir, he issued, the squad van is supposed to evacuate west, not east. Shane smiled, appearing to take pleasure in being a step ahead of the entire conversation. I know that. So why are you sending me east? Why don't I... Johnny stopped himself, realizing the plan Shane had put in place to protect him. You said Emma would be safe, he shouted. You said... Johnny, Shane yelled back, raising his voice for the first time. His face cringed as if frustrated by Johnny's lack of understanding. How many times do I have to explain it to you? He slammed the side of his hand on the desk. Emma is not in danger. Liz is not in danger. He was turning red now, too. If you really must know, the Chinese program will have a squad ready to pounce as soon as they're in danger. You can't possibly think we'd end things before we get information. Shane quickly poured himself another glass and downed it before Johnny could even formulate his next sentence. The deputy's face remained red, but his outburst appeared to cool. Garen would never allow his only daughter to be in any real danger, he continued. She's going to be fine, and so are you as long as you do exactly what I tell you to do. Johnny felt his jaw tighten. His urge to punch Shane in the face had returned. Then why aren't I allowed to go with them? Shane's stoicism revealed a layer of pity. Johnny felt the heat continuing to rise through his body. Because I need to keep you safe, Shane voiced. No! You want to keep my abilities safe, Johnny shouted. That's what this is about, isn't it? You don't care about me, you just care about what I can do for you. Johnny, Shane pulled, his eyes glaring daggers across the table. Calm down. He wanted to keep shouting. He wanted to scream and argue, to let his emotions get the better of him and curse Shane for all his plotting, knowing he could get the upper hand in the conversation if he wanted to. But something inside him stopped the words from getting out. The look on Shane's face was haunting him. The longer he looked, the more he believed that Shane wasn't trying to use him. Shane really was trying to keep him safe. His words confirmed it. If you ever want to see Emma again, he staggered. If you want to come home safe and bring things back to normal, you need to disappear and wait this out until it dies down. Johnny sighed, trying to acknowledge this as the correct decision. For how long? Shane kept his eyes on Johnny, melancholic. 3 months, he breathed. Max. 3 months? Shane was quick to jump on him. At most, he reiterated. Plenty of time to decipher Noah, figure things out with Poland, and trace the route of your bounty. We already have eyes on the source. We just want the information confirmed as thoroughly as we can so we don't make another blunder. Johnny's throat was swelling. And the squad is supposed to think what? He choked. That I'm just... okay? That I disappeared? Shane shook his head. You'll signal the magenta as soon as you hear my cue, Shane ordered. They'll trust you to get to safety the same way Emma's brother did in Poland. Until you resurface, we'll let them know you're okay. And Emma's just supposed to believe that? To trust in the system? You really have no clue about her, do you? Emma's entire life is the system, Shane spat. If she doesn't trust that we have the answers, then that's her problem. But if you think she has the balls to countermand what we're doing, then it's you who has no clue, Johnny. He held up his hands as soon as he finished the sentence, pausing to relieve the air between them. You remember my colleague in Scotland? He refreshed. The one who specialized in mental effects. Johnny took a breath and flexed his brow. You're sending me to Scotland? Shane shook his head. Not at the moment, he claimed. You won't be going anywhere traceable by the IREA, and that's for the best. If we can't find you, then neither can anyone else. Johnny tried his best to remain calm. He had no other options. There was no way to fight against his position. Accept it, Shane seemed to tell him subconsciously. But he will be there, Shane continued. And so will a handful of others I would trust with my very existence. Johnny tried to imagine all the places he could end up from Beijing. Japan? North Korea? The mountains? An irritating sense of excitement momentarily clouded his dread before diving back below the surface. Who are they? He found himself saying. Do you know where I'm going? Of course I do, Shane said, rather cocksure. But it would take threat of torture to make me give up your information. I hope you know that. And for anyone to get that close to me, the whole system would have to fall first. Shane lightened his eyes and reassured him. As long as I'm in this office, you're always protected. Same with Garen and Emma. You guys are going to be absolutely fine. He turned his gaze to the display cases. As for who these people are, let's call them family, for now. The word struck Johnny harder than expected. And what about my family? He barked. You still didn't answer my question. Where are they supposed to think I've gone for 3 months? Maximum, Shane reiterated. And what do you think? Johnny had no answer. He wanted Shane's reassurance. Your family's dead, Shane said with casual honesty. My brother isn't dead, he argued furiously. Your adoptive brother, Shane corrected. And you're right. But he still has hope that his mother's still out there, whereas you've completely given up. Johnny perked. Are you saying she's still alive? I'm saying nothing of the sort, Shane deflated. But do you think he'd give up on you if you disappear too? Especially when all the evidence points to you having escaped? No, he sighed. And Emma, Shane continued. You just said she wouldn't stop questioning the truth. You think she's just going to sit by and think you're dead after you've given the magenta and they can't find your body? Johnny pictured the other corpse they'd be bringing back after the mission and shivered. No, he repeated. Then trust that this family of yours is going to keep on keeping on without you until you get back. Johnny swallowed hard, trying above all things to picture the reunion rather than the time separated, but he was failing miserably. He thought of Jordan, realizing he had not truly spoken to his brother in months. Frustration boiled behind his eyes. Frustration at Jordan for not apologizing sooner, for not giving him the right reason to make Johnny trust him again. Frustration at himself for revering consequence to the level that he did, unable to break from the punishments his mother had taught him. Most of all, frustration at Shane. He had promised to keep things a secret. If he suddenly turned around and forgave Jordan without reason, then Jordan would know something was wrong and pry until he found it. Another 3 months, he thought. Shane's voice came from miles away. Are we understood? His face came back into focus through a kaleidoscope of static. Johnny choked. Yes, sir. He knew there was nothing he could do. The plan was already in motion. If he refused, then what? Would they put him in the firing line instead? No, he thought. Obey and survive was the only option. Shane glanced up with a new expression. For the first time, he appeared to register Johnny's willingness to accept the mission. I've been in your shoes before, he admitted. I don't envy it. Johnny was surprised by his transparency. You were, sir? Never with the program, he clarified. But with the Army, yes. He pointed to the picture on the wall. It won me my Medal of Honor. Johnny frowned. Sir, I've already agreed to go. You don't have to bribe me. Shane shrugged. I know that. But sometimes it's nice to be reassured. He stood, and Johnny realized he was escorting him out. He stood in echo. Your willingness won't go unnoticed, Shane said. Good things come to those who submit to their authorities. He paused for the briefest moment, then added, Romans 13. Johnny held back another weak laugh. He was not in the mood to laugh. Do you believe in God, sir? They were halfway across the room before Shane stopped, not looking to Johnny but continuing to eye the door. Without God, he hushed, to whom would I submit? He continued walking to the door, while Johnny stared at him bewildered. Just relax, Shane urged. I know you're worried about the next couple of weeks, but try to focus as much as you can on your friends in the squad. Spend time with your girlfriend. You're going to want those memories the longer you're away. As soon as he was out the door, the world became even more unnaturally quiet. His heart still racing, Shane's final words had given slight comfort as he trekked to the nearby station. Wind continued its casual whistle through the city, sweeping loose snow from the ground and creating clouds of mist for Johnny to march through between the embassy and home. The ringing in his ears returned as soon as he stepped off the train. Breathing became more difficult. His face grew hot. His eyes began to fog, and in an instant, the whole world appeared covered in snow. He felt himself fall, and a slow, wet cold crept up the side of his body as he realized he had collapsed onto the ground. Hey! A voice shouted. Are you all right? Shapes reappeared in Johnny's vision, and he could distinguish the outline of a night patrolman coming toward him. He rolled himself to his hands and knees, then vomited into the snow. Whoa! The man approached. Come on, let's get you to it. No! Johnny huffed. I'm not sick. He wiped his mouth on the inside of his undershirt and pulled himself to his feet with the help of the patrolman. I just need to get home, he begged. Please. 3006. 15th floor. The man marched him through the front doors, probably thinking he was intoxicated, but he made no mention of Johnny's condition, nor any further worries, and he silently helped them to the elevator and down the floor to the common room. Thank you. Johnny shook with a gloved hand. His vision and consciousness nearly returned completely. The man was small and pudgy, shorter than he was. His pink face was bundled in a thick black hat and scarf, bare of any hair. He could not have been much older than 20. I'm not drunk, Johnny clarified. The man was unworried. I know, he swiped. Anxiety, right? Johnny managed a small smile. Something like that. The man nodded. We see it all the time, he assured. You got a mission soon? Johnny took a deep breath. Yeah. You'll do fine, the man assured. Just stick to your training. Do what you know. Everything will work out all right. Johnny managed a larger smile. Thanks. He reached out his hand a second final time. Officer Richmond, the man said, taking his hand again. Then he stepped away while Johnny fiddled for his keycard. You have a good night. He stumbled into a dark common room, exactly as he had left it, though Emma had evidently made the move to bed and shut off the TV. Praying she had not chosen his room, he stripped off as soon as he was inside it, and took a desperately long shower to wash away every thought coursing through his mind. 3 months away from all of this. Did they even have showers where he was going? The weight of everything he would be leaving behind did not fully hit him until he made his way to Emma's room, and he saw her curled up under the covers fast asleep. A wave of emotions flooded him. The first, a desire to simply stand there and watch her for as long as he could. Even asleep, she was beautiful. She was so at peace there, so calm on her own without him that his sudden desire to be next to her made the first part of him angry. He fought this as best he could, and when he crawled in beside her, the first wave disappeared, giving way to a second desire to simply be as close to her as he possibly could. Being next to her, holding her, was not enough. He wanted to wrap her around him, wanted her to hold him, to comfort him this time, and let himself break down into her. No closeness in the world would give him the relief he desperately wanted, at least none that he was willing to allow. He simply lay there, his arms wrapped around Emma's body like a straitjacket, his face buried into her skin as he pictured the world without her. Her breathing was his heartbeat, and desperately trying to keep from moving or making a sound, he felt tears well in his eyes, trapped between his face and hers. I'll be back, he echoed to himself. All of this will still be here when I get back. But as much as he could try to comfort himself about leaving it all behind, Johnny was certain about one thing. Even after he returned, the squad would not be the same. One of them was not returning from China alive.